All right, Mr. K here again. We're talking about steering systems again today, and we're going to do part two. I'm going to say this is probably part two of two because I think this pretty much knocks out everything we need to talk about for this. So let's jump into it. We're going to talk about hydraulic power steering, electric power steering, steer-by-wire cars, and lane assist and adaptive cruise. And you may be thinking, well, why is cruise control, how does cruise control have to do with this? It doesn't, I guess. It's just the fact that it doesn't fit in anywhere else and throughout the year. So we're going to just touch base on it today. So hydraulic power steering. Now you notice that I put PS at the top. I didn't put power steering. That's not me being lazy. That's because I'm trying to get you into the habit of recognizing acronyms that are common in the automotive world and in shop manuals and in for sale listings for cars. People don't put power steering, and even the shop manual doesn't write power steering. They put PS, and you just have to know what it stands for. You'll be lost. So hydraulic power steering basically consists of, you've got fluid in a reservoir tank under the hood. You fill it up with power steering fluid. That runs down a line into the power steering pump, which then pressurizes that fluid, sends it to a spool valve, okay, or a directional valve. And then that decides which side of this piston to send fluid to so it can help move the rack and pinion back and forth, make it easier for you to steer. And then the extras go back to the reservoir and it just recirculates again. Okay, go ahead and pause my video at this time and watch this one. Okay, you should have just watched that video. That helps explain how power steering, hydraulic power steering works. It talks a little bit about electric also. So in hydraulic power steering, you've got a fluid reservoir. We talked about that. It's going to look something like that. It's going to say power steering fluid on it, or it's going to look like that. It's probably going to have a steering wheel icon. It's going to have something on it, shows you what it is. You need to check the level of it. Keep contaminants out, so keep water out, keep dirt and that type of thing. And use the correct fluid. And then my next question to you is going to be, how do you know what's the correct fluid? Okay. Well, you go to Napa and you say, I need power steering fluid, and they're probably going to sell you this. And that would be right most of the time. And when I say most, I'm saying over 50% of the time, that would be the right thing to use. But there are quite a few cars that's not the right thing to use. So as always, check the manual, check the cap. I don't know if you can see this, but here's a chart of all just a bunch of brands of vehicles and what they use. Probably the most common misconception about power steering fluid or thing that people mess up on is with Ford. Okay, Ford, all models, Mercon, transmission fluid. Let me see if it's on here. Okay, Mercury's not on here, but it would be the same story. Mercury, all models would probably be transmission fluid. Mazda, all models, Dexron 3, Infiniti, Isuzu, Kia, Lexus. Okay, notice these are all transmission fluid. They're not calling for power steering. Here's ATF plus 4 for certain types of Jeeps. But earlier types of Jeeps, take Chrysler power steering fluid. You gotta look at the manual. Look at this. Nissan wants Nissan power steering fluid. Okay, so again, check the manual. Make sure you're putting the right stuff in, or it can tear up. It can degrade the seals, cause faster wear. I just like to put this up here because it's such a common mistake. Ford power steering fluid on, oh boy, probably 80s and newer Fords, I'm going to guess, are going to tell you to put transmission fluid in. It's going to be Mercon 5 for anything from the 2000s and newer. And just for fun, I threw this up here. Here's a back of a Mobil 1 automatic transmission fluid container, and it says that you can use it where Dexron or Mercon fluids are recommended. So there you go. They're saying you go ahead and use it in power steering if you need transmission fluid. All right. So we talked about the reservoir. We talked about filling it using the correct fluid. Let's talk about the lines that go to and from the reservoir. They're going to look something like that. They're going to be a braided steel line, or they may be just a rubber line. But if they're rubber, they're pretty tough. At least the pressure side is. It's going to look something like that. And if you're working on a car that's 10 years old or more, they may look something like that. Notice that real nasty, crusty, flaking rust. That is very bad. That thing's going to blow any second. Any day now, that's going to blow. It's going to shoot power steering fluid everywhere, and it could start a fire. And there you go. There's another power steering line that's been rubbing on something, and it's chafing. It's going to wear a hole right through it. So what I'm going to tell you with power steering lines, check them for rust, check for cracks, and check for poor routing or chafing. Okay, inspect them so you don't get yourself stranded. A little more on lines, just another good shot here. Notice this is saying this is the low side hose and this is the high side fitting. If it didn't have that label, how else could you figure that out? Well, this guy is a low pressure side, I know, because it's just got a simple hose with a hose clamp on it. This side's got a steel line with a fitting, probably a lot more pressure in there. Just to show you how much power steering pressure lines are, take a look at that. That is for a 2008 Pontiac Grand Prix. So a very common car, a cheap car. It's still a lot of money. So watch yourself on power steering lines. Like I said, inspect them, make sure they're not rubbing on anything, they're not melting on the exhaust, all that good stuff. So if you don't have hydraulic power steering, you would have electric power steering. Go ahead and pause my video and watch this one. Okay, you should have just watched that video. That hopefully give you a good idea of what electric power steering is and kind of how it's different than hydraulic. Let me see where my mouse is. Okay, here's an electric power steering system, typical one. Notice it looks pretty darn close to just a rack and pinion system without any power steering lines on it, because that's what it is. It's a rack and pinion steering system, and you've got the column going right down to it, and that those tie rods connect to the wheels to turn them, and that's it. That's all there is to it. But oh yeah, I forgot to tell you, it's also got a electric motor hanging right here. It's also got a torque sensor down probably in here. Maybe, I guess this one's saying it's up here. So it's got a torque sensor, and that also goes to an ECU, which then determines how much power to give this motor to help you steer left or right. But it actually probably overall is simpler in terms of less parts, less pieces, less things to go wrong, less lines everywhere, that type of stuff. So again, no hydraulic lines, no reservoir, no spool valve, because you don't have any fluid in this. It's all dry. It's just an electric motor. So the electric motor that helps you to steer on electric power steering could be mounted on the steering column or down on the rack outside of the cab. This one's mounted, it's part of the rack, okay? Here is a column mounted assist, I'm gonna call it an assist motor, power steering motor. There's your steering wheel, your steering column. You're still inside the car there. You're just right above your knees or your ankles. And there's that big motor hanging right off the side that helps you steer. Here's some rack mounted assist motors. Okay. Notice this guy, big motor hanging off the steering rack. This guy, it's kind of hard to tell, but I believe that's actually the Honda design. And the motor is kind of inside of the rack itself. Doesn't hang off. But anyway, there's an electric motor there is the point. Okay. We talked about different kinds of power steering, how they work. Here's something else. It's a little bit different, a little bit futuristic, but I think it's coming, and it's something you guys need to know about. Steer-by-wire systems. I will tell you before you watch the video, they're not approved by the Department of Transportation yet, as far as I know. No car in production has this installed, but several manufacturers are itching to do it as soon as it gets approved. So go ahead and watch this video and that'll tell you all about it. Okay, you should have just watched that video. Hopefully that gave you some insight on what steer-by-wire is. So again, as a refresher, there is no link. If it's steer-by-wire, there's no link between the steering wheel or steering column and the actual wheels. So in theory, if you cut the wires, then the car wouldn't be steerable at all. Or if your battery went dead, your engine cut out while you're driving, your battery was bad, you would not be able to steer the car at all. I just threw this slide up here just to show you Tesla. A lot of people think that the new Teslas are steer-by-wire because they have some automated steering functions. They're not. They still have a physical connection to the wheels. They're not steer-by-wire. Okay, it's not allowed yet. But they're itching to do it. Lane assist and adaptive cruise control. Why don't you go ahead and watch this video to learn about that. Okay, you should have just watched that video. In short, lane assist is what keeps you in your lane when you're driving down the highway. Adaptive cruise control is what hits the brakes for you or hits the gas without you doing that, either one of those things. Just to show you how complex these systems are on these new cars. Here's a newer BMW with all the sensors in front. It's got a rain sensor that'll kick the wipers on when it starts raining, right? Here's a camera that is actually what powers the lane assist or lane departure, whatever you want to call it, powers that warning system or that system. Night vision sensor or low light sensor, a front view camera, an ACC radar. Okay. To me, this is the brains of the adaptive cruise control, and this camera is the brains of the lane assist. There's your adaptive cruise control radar, just kind of a different view of it. So it is going to detect those vehicles up in front of you. And again, that guy slows down, it's going to hit your brakes. There's where it is on a GMC, on a Honda, on a Ford. I could keep going with these slides. I'm just showing you some different examples. Okay, this time go ahead and complete your assignment on Steering Systems Part 2 and have a good day.